I found out that we also lost Eve Hinderer, who was part of the poetry scene from Newburgh, New York, and a lot of us hadn't heard from her in some time. It appears that she has passed. She had passed in March of this year. So I'd like to remember Eve Hinderer as well. On the 3rd of September, E.E. Cummings died in 1962. The Irish poet Louis MacNeice died in 1963. Alan Dugan, an American poet, died in 2003. And John Ashbery this year in 2017, he was 90 years old. On the 4th, Richard Wright was born in 1908. René de Chateaubriand, French poet, 1768. Joan Aiken, who also wrote poetry as her father Conrad did. She was born in 1924 and became a successful children's author in England. On the 5th, the great Amy Beach, one of our fine late Romantic era composers in America, 1867. Robert Ferguson, Scottish poet, 1750. All Virgos for you. Johann Christian Bach in 1735. And on the 6th, we lost the great maestro Luciano Pavarotti in 2007. The 6th of September, he was 71. The 7th, we have Buddy Holly, born in Texas in 1936. The great Sonny Rollins, born with the saxophone in his hand in 1930. The great American poet Eleanor Wiley, was she British, I think? Eleanor Wiley, born in 1885. No, she was an American. John Greenleaf Whittier's death in 1892. Edith Sitwell, she was certainly British, 1887, her birth. And John Polidori, not only was he a poet, a playwright, and a very interesting novelist, he was Byron's personal physician for the hypochondriacal Lord Byron. 1795, Polidori was born. The great novelist Taylor Caldwell, she was born in 1900. Queen Elizabeth I, who not only sanctioned and tolerated the poetry of the likes of Walter Raleigh and others, but she was born in 1533. And today we have the French poet Alfred Jarry in 1873, Antonin Dvorak in 1841, Siegfried Sassoon in 1886 in England, and our very own Patsy Cline in 1932. Patsy Cline, you don't hear her name anymore. All right, one by Eleanor Wiley. Full Moon. My bands of silk and miniver momently grew heavier. The black gauze was beggarly thin. The ermine muffled mouth and chin. I could not suck the moonlight in. Harlequin in lozenges of love and hate, I walked in these. Stripped and ragged rigmaroles, along the pavement my foot soles trod warily on living coals. Shouldering the thoughts I loathed, in their corrupt disguises clothed, mortality I could not tear from my ribs, to leave them bare, ivory in silver air. There I walked, and there I raged, the spiritual savage caged, within my skeleton raged afresh, to feel, behind a carnal mesh, the clean bones crying in the flesh. Eleanor Wiley. That one is fairly well anthologized, that poem of hers. All right, Siegfried Sassoon. Autumn. October's bellowing anger breaks and cleaves the bronzed battalions of the stricken wood, in whose lament I hear a voice that grieves for battle's fruitless harvest and the feud of outraged men. Their lives are like the leaves, scattered in flocks of ruin, tossed and blown along the westering furnace flaring red. O martyred youth and manhood overthrown, the burden of your wrongs is on my head. Siegfried Sassoon, probably one of the greatest of the World War I era poets. All right, and that poem was from 1917. Just a few notes of introduction. I'm talking about a particular Anglo-American architect who was friends and as a colleague with Richard Morris Hunt, who helped to design this building that you're sitting in right now. And interestingly enough, Calvert Vaux is buried up in Kingston, New York. He was born in London and lived here. You may remember, designed Central Park and the Middletown Psychiatric Center, etc. But he's buried up in Montrepose, up in Kingston. Calvert Vaux, architect for Poseidon, and he was a drowning victim, incidentally, in his old age. December 20th, 1824, London, England, to November 19th, 1895, Brooklyn, New York. 1. I did not think that leaving my England would lead to much fame and such ruin. My Sagittarius flame blazing in my homeland, carrying the torch to America, holding court in the great city and grand Hudson Valley, would eventually sink in Gravesend Bay, Brooklyn, calling me, hiring me as an architect for Poseidon. What would my London know of Montrepose? I never made it home. In Kingston, New York's haunted cemetery by the railroad tracks, my bones hide, my mind alive within blueprints of the bay. They could have laid my remnants under the shade of a grand oak in Central Park, near one of my bridges over a lover's lane, bestrewn with autumn leaves. One of the fields at the State Hospital up in Middletown, my ghost seen only by the patients. 2. Olmsted, your plans and commissions far outshined mine, but I gave to you the gift of old country wisdom, the blueprints of time to break ground in the nascent republic. Hunt, I did not dream of Howland Subscription Library with its secret architecture, gables and geometry of initiates, gaslighting, chasing ghosts and intriguing them. Downing, your park was a mere sibling of my garden in Manhattan, Child of Eden. In Newburgh, just north of the Grand West Point, I worked with you before the deceptive Hudson claimed you at 36, a map I had no knowledge for. You were a decade older, but your passion and wisdom made you nearly immortal. My life, my fire, extinguished above, legacy complete. Yet, below the currents of Gravesend, a new vocation unfolded. Dark November waves, depths of death, fathomed not when in the light of creation. Here was a vacancy in cold New York waters, an architect for Poseidon. Thank you. All right. Another Hudson Valley poem. Onions and Diesel, Big Island Road, Goshen, New York. Autumn wants to enter the heat-wilted fields. She struggles to shed raindrops after weeks of drought. Black dirt is sun-washed to brown. Vultures leave desiccated offal, nothing damp and yielding. Army surplus truck races over the Confident Bridge. Red onion skins, sheets and sheaves trail behind. Diesel overtakes onion perfume. Purple loosestrife and goldenrod tremble. Bridge shakes in heft horror. September's paint birth is crowning. Crow doulas prepare limbs and leaves. Equinox due date. Cabbage moths bound over pokeweed's tiny violet jewels. Truck breath scatters on the wind. Gray clouds fill the sky meadow. Onion fields regain the fumes of harvest, and autumn renames her crops of weather. Thank you. I'll do one more. This is a recent one. Actually, this is from this week, I should say. What?
How soon they forget?
Ah, well, yes, of course. Cold rain in September. Each summer-haunted raindrop in September is an omen, a cloud-woven spell for autumn. They speak of frost, boughs of snow, and days of cold after leaves. during Hurricane Treason, when wind and rain become weapons, winds ring clouds, their end of summer lamentation, a long remorse, a lone goodbye. How sad it is to envision the wilt of leaf, the loss of light. Now to haunt in gaunt fields, empty sheds, creaking oaks and flower beds where petals have fallen and new colors chosen, carried on antique pallets for greens that have grown gold, smoldering orange and monarch red. 2. September, your sunrise steams a heat-tired roof, wakens late morning glory, calls to Rose of Sharon, last days of bumblebees' visits. September, gather summer stocks, cook and salad the final vegetables. Forget the bushels of fickle maids and lies of matrons, harvest veterans. Hail their fading into misted night, as brother sunrise expedites his verity of autumn's yarns. Thank you.